Who's ready for some wicked witchcraft, motherfuckers? I know I am, which is why we're talking about the 1977 Italian horror classic Suspiria and its 2018 remake of the same name. It's another remake rumble here on Filmgazm as I try my best to dissect two films that redefine the word convoluted, but in a good way. Massive spoiler warning in store for both films, so don't say I didn't warn you, but, every horror fan worth his salt should definitely see Suspiria. The story, the bare bones of it anyway, revolves around an American girl named Susie Banyan who is accepted into a prestigious German ballet academy that is secretly a bloodthirsty witch coven. Darkness, beauty, rage, chaos, love, and a whole lot of blood are all in store for today's weird as fuck Filmgazm. Before we get started, thanks for tuning in. My name is Eyzaguirre. I'm a massive film buff, and Filmgazm is a podcast where I talk about my favorite genre, horror, as well as weird Hollywood shit and cool careers that pique my interests. If you'd like to see more from Filmgazm, feel free to visit filmgazm.com. That's Filmgazm. And there you can check out daily movie reviews, articles about movies, newest trailers, and all my early podcasts that I did with my partners, some of whom will be appearing as featured guests in the future. You've already heard from Austin a few times. I'm looking forward to the upcoming 10th episode, where Austin and I will talk about the career and troubling life of Roman Polanski, the visionary director behind films like Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby, and the dirtbag behind a horrific molestation charge that caused him to flee the United States. Find out more in just a few weeks. Now, on to Suspiria. If you're anything like me, and you're thinking, what the hell does Suspiria even mean? Then you're in luck, because I Googled it. According to Google, the title of the film comes from the Latin phrase Suspiria de profundis, which means sighs from the depths. It was coined by English writer Thomas de Quincey in 1845 in his essay of the same name. It was this essay that inspired Italian filmmaker Dario Argento to create his Three Mothers trilogy, beginning with 1977's Suspiria, continuing with 1980's Inferno, and ending with 2007's Mother of Tears. The three films are thematic sequels, meaning they don't have any literal connection apart from similar themes. Kind of like Edgar Wright's Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End all had a similar theme. They're all a loosely connected trilogy, but there's no ongoing same is about, the same as with Argento's Three Mothers trilogy. So, the original Suspiria was co-written and directed by Dario Argento, one of the most influential names in Italian horror and just horror in general, whose nickname is quite literally Master of Horror. Some of his trademarks include bright colors, English-speaking protagonists in a foreign land, usually Europe, and close-ups of eyes, creepy-looking eyes, all of which assist in just making his films super weird and freaky. Suspiria is widely regarded as his masterpiece, and it's a cult classic. For good reasons. It's a fantastic movie. It has a 7.5 on IMDb and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 93%. You don't get to 93% if you're some chump of a horror film. That's the best of the best. And personally, I think it's earned its rep. I first saw this film in college. I think it was my sophomore year. I watched it for my European cinema class, which, admittedly, looking back, was one of the only films I actually watched. There was a very loose structure of that class. Like, he would tell you which films to watch, but he would never, verify if you actually watched them. I wasn't a very good student. I should have watched most of those films. But looking back, that was not smart. I think, Suspiria was one of them. 1966 Django, I watched that. Fucking love that movie. That might be it. It was a 6 or 7 month class. I maybe watched 2 films. That's disappointing. Anyway, I didn't really have a lot of time to find a decent copy, so I had to settle for a grainy YouTube video with English subtitles. I finally watched it again for this podcast after getting my hands on a good copy. And, I forgot how amazing this was. What struck me almost immediately was the insanely creepy music by the Italian band Goblin, who produced a great deal of horror movie scores for Argento and a lot of other directors in the 1970s, including the European cut of Dawn of the Dead. The score for Suspiria has a fairy tale quality to it, almost like we're watching a dream or somebody's nightmare. The vibrant red blood, and like too red to be blood, like paint, and the uncertainty of, you don't really know what's going on. It makes this feel like something out of Grimm's fairy tales, and the hard stuff, not the Disney fluff. Remember, before Disney started adapting fairy tales, the Grimm fairy tales were brutal, bloody, and unforgiving. People were ripped apart. People were eaten. Little Mermaid, I think, got her legs cut off. If that was even one of theirs, I don't know. But yeah, just really freaky stuff. For if you want to check out a cool Brothers Grimm movie, check out 2005's The Brothers Grimm. Terry Gilliam directed. Stars Matt Damon, Heath Ledger, Lena Headey, Jonathan Pryce, and Peter Stormare. Really underrated film. Really captures the just freakiness of early fairy tales. But back to Suspiria. The film stars Jessica Harper as Susie Banyan. She's the American girl recently accepted to this very hard to get into German ballet academy. And Harper would later cameo as Anka, Dr. Klemperer's late wife, in the 2018 Suspiria remake. The rest of the cast are Italian and English actresses who mostly stuck to minor TV roles after Suspiria. And I don't want to tell you too much because I do want you to see these movies with kind of fresh eyes if you haven't seen them. But before I wrap this up, I do need to mention my favorite scene, which I think is one of the scariest scenes in horror history. I was watching it today, and I had a long day. I was starting to nod off a little bit. And then this scene came on, and it jerked me awake. It freaked me out so bad I didn't expect it. And the scene in question involves Sarah, Susie's friend, played by Stefania Cassini, being chased by some dark force that we never fully see. The music kind of infects the scene like a virus. It just keeps going as this dark shape suddenly appears behind her, and all we see in the darkness is a pair of lit-up eyes just right behind her. Holy shit, folks. I nearly had a heart attack. And then it stabs her with a straight razor, and she ends up falling through a window, trapped in a whole bunch of razor wire that she never escapes from alive. It's really freaky. And, both versions of Suspiria rely on the audience paying attention to the little things in order to enjoy the payoff, like Susie learning about the ancient witch Helena Marcos. This exchange seems like filler until you realize Helena Marcos is the true villain of the movie and has been manipulating the coven the entire time for her own benefit. And if you're not paying attention to that little exchange, this is a huge shocker to you. And it's a huge shocker regardless, but it's a cool thing to, notice. And, I like when a film expects the audience to give a shit and get invested in order to enjoy the film, fully. And I think it's a quality that's really starting to go away in film. And I think that with the 2018 Suspiria trying for that exact thing, I really hope that's a trend that keeps going. I like that. I don't want to be spoon-fed every detail at every moment. I want to think a little bit sometimes. And with that, here's some Filmgazm facts for you. IMDb is filled with weird trivia and fun facts about every film ever made. So here, I seek out the ones that I think are the weirdest, funniest, strangest, and just share them for shits and giggles. And here we go. Number 1. The woman playing Helena Marcos was not credited. According to Jessica Harper, she was a 90-year-old ex-hooker who director Dario Argento found on the streets of Rome. That doesn't seem very union. Number 2. Dario Argento was inspired to make this film by stories of his girlfriend at the time, Daria Nicolodi's grandmother, who claimed to have fled from a German music academy because witchcraft was being secretly practiced there. Good job getting the hell out of there, Grandma. You could have ended up Helena Marcos' next vessel. And Dario Nicolodi is also the co-screenwriter of Suspiria. And number 3. This was the only installment in the Three Mothers trilogy where the witch is not referred to by her original Latin name. Instead, she's referred to by her regular name, Helena Markos. She would subsequently be identified as Mother Suspiriorum, the Mother of Sighs, in the sequels Inferno and Mother of Tears. And that gives us a perfect segue into the 2018 remake. So in 2018, the long-gestating remake of Suspiria finally came out and was met with mixed reviews, admittedly. It was divisive due to its intimidating 2.5-hour runtime and its artsy approach to the source material. So 2.5 hours is fucking steep for a horror film. It's steep for any film, but horror usually doesn't, break 2 hours. It's hard to keep people's interest in something that's freaking them out for longer than like an hour and a half. 2.5 hours is ballsy. It was directed by Luca Guadagnino, who recently drew critical acclaim for his Oscar-winning love story, Call Me By Your Name. Fantastic film. Just beautiful, forbidden love story. Incredible. The remake stars Dakota Johnson of 50 Shades fame as Susie Bannion, and Tilda Swinton in 3 separate roles. She plays Madame Blanc, Dr. Klemperer, a kind of local therapist who's getting involved in this, and Helena Markos. And I had no idea that 2 of these roles were Tilda Swinton until the film was over, because she's under heavy, heavy makeup for 2 of them, and just the fact that she pulled that off, unbelievable. Tilda Swinton is such an underappreciated performer, and every performance she gives just keeps reminding me that she's fantastic. Also in the cast are Chloe Grace Moretz as Patricia and Mia Goth as Sarah. The film has a 6.9 IMDb and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 66%, so kind of like right in the middle. Now, in my past reviews on Filmgazm.com, I've been very vocal about how much I dislike art films. I think they're pretentious, irritating, and a huge waste of time. I don't want to sit there without, getting invested in a story. I'm a writer, so I get into the story. I look for the story, I look for the characters. You got to have that for me to want to give a shit about your movie. And when I heard how artsy Suspiria, the new one, was, I was upset. Like, am I really going to sit there for 2.5 hours and watch some kind of artsy horror film? And yeah, I did. And I fucking loved it. I thought this was a brilliant reimagining, and in some ways, I thought it surpassed Argento's film, mostly in terms of the way it handled the mythology and character development. The thing about Argento's Suspiria is it's very light on character development. It's mostly an atmospheric kind of horror film where you're just kind of waiting for something to happen, which is fine. I think it's great. But the way that the new Suspiria gave new life to these characters was mesmerizing. While Argento's Three Mothers trilogy devoted each film to a different mother, 2018 Suspiria uses all 3 as a major plot point. The 3 mothers are ancient gods that existed before time and the universe itself, and they're sources of great, unimaginable power. They are Mother Tenebrarum, Mother Lacrimarum, and Mother Suspiriorum. The Coven, led by Helena Markos, serves these gods. As I said, the 2018 version is way more involved and convoluted, but it's so goddamn beautiful and hypnotizing that you don't get lost. You care. You're following this crazy-ass story about these ancient gods and these evil witches and these lost girls, and you get it. It's really weird. I don't know why, but you get it. The music is composed by Radiohead's Tom York, and he does an incredible job of making such a haunting, humanizing score that helps Suspiria straddle a line between horror and drama that very few horror films can do. And Tom York did a couple songs for the soundtrack too. Just beautiful, ethereal. I love it. The main focus of the film is the relationship that blooms between Susie Bannion and Madame Blanc, the head teacher of the school. And this is something that wasn't in the original. And it adds an extra layer of humanity to both the good and the bad characters. And it makes you wonder where exactly your own loyalties lie. You know, who's really evil here? Who's the bad guy and who's the good guy? There's not, it's a gray area. And your shifting loyalties really keep you invested in this film for the long run. And it's time for more Filmgazm facts. As I said, I don't want to go too in-depth on the plot here because I do want you to enjoy these films on your own. Number 1. In an interview with Elle magazine, actress Dakota Johnson revealed the intensity of the shoot had, quote, fucked her up so much that she had to go to therapy. And yeah, I get that. Seeing this film, being in this would get in your head. It would fuck you up. I totally get that. Number 2. It had taken a long time for this movie to come into fruition. They'd been trying to remake Suspiria for decades. A remake was announced in the early 2000s. After Guadagnino had acquired the option from the original film's writers, he offered the project to director David Gordon Green, who would later do the Halloween reboot last year. But that movie was canceled due to financing conflicts. And then in September 2015, Guadagnino confirmed his plans to direct, with the film described as an homage to the 1977 film, rather than a direct remake. A new screenplay was drafted by David Kajganich, who had written Guadagnino's previous project, A Bigger Splash, in 2015. Kajganich set the film during the German autumn of 1977 to explore themes of generational guilt in Germany following World War II. And that really does enhance the film. It gives you a kind of like a blanket of what to expect from this world. It's all the characters, they grew up in post World War II Germany, where everything was just decimated and people were having to decide, who they were again after the atrocities committed by the Nazis. And, Russia and the United States had divided Berlin with the Berlin Wall, and just the film does a great job of keeping us grounded. And number 3, Tilda Swinton's performance as Dr. Josef Klemperer came about when both Swinton and director Luca Guadagnino thought that in a movie centering on women, it felt right to have a woman also play the principal male character. During filming, only a few cast members and virtually none of the extras knew that it was really Swinton in heavy makeup. They purposely credited a fictitious German actor called Lutz Ebersdorf as Klemperer to hide this fact. The ruse would have gone as far as stating that Ebersdorf had already passed away during the editing phase, which would have explained his absence at the movie's premiere. But Guadagnino thought this went too far. And yeah, they did leave a clue in the name tying this alias to Swinton. Eber, meaning boar or swine, and Dorf, meaning town in German. Therefore, Swinetown or Swinton. Pretty layered joke. Well, for my final score, I think both versions of Suspiria are worthy of an 8. They are both fantastic films that contribute so much to the horror genre. It's rare that a horror remake is so well made and stands on its own, like Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria does. One day I will go into Argento's Three Mothers trilogy. Sounds like something to shoot for. I think that would be fun. Thanks for listening. If you want to see more from Filmgazm, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or YouTube for weekly videos every Wednesday, as well as check out the website, filmgazm.com, and the social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates on reviews, podcasts, articles, any sort of cool movie news or trailers we feel like mentioning. And, if you ever want us to take on a specific movie, feel free to post on any of our social media or email us at filmgazm@gmail.com. We're always up for suggestions. I want to thank Austin Johnson and Caleb Leger for keeping the site fully stocked with reviews and articles. And stay tuned next Wednesday for another Filmgazm. I'm thinking finally Hannibal Lecter. Looking like that's probably going to happen next week, and that'll be a lot of fun. In the meantime, stay the hell away from witchcraft and never trust ballet dancers. Odds are at least most of them are dancing for the devil.